Welcome to this episode of Crossing Barriers, Building Friendships, a podcast of Peace Lutheran Church in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Our guest today is Nina Perry, and she is the Family Service Manager at Spring Hill Memorial Gardens Funeral Home and Cremation. Welcome, Nina. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here to get to talk about something that I am so passionate about.
Well, I think it's great that you're passionate about a subject that most people don't want to talk about.
Yes, ma'am. I find that interesting when we're sometimes calling people and they'll say, I'm not interested. And I said, you know what? I'm not interested either, but it is going to happen, unfortunately.
Right. So tell us about some of the services real quickly that Spring Hill Memorial Gardens Funeral Home and Cremation provide, besides the obvious.
Yes, Pastor Ann, this is a combination, what we call a combination. So we are a funeral home and cemetery. We're full service and we're all on one property. So that means we pick your loved one up, bring them into our care, and they never leave us. We do also have a crematory, not a favorite subject with some, and we try to be very respectful when we actually use the crematory because we are on Main Street. However, we do have all the facilities here to put together a beautiful celebration of life. Sometimes that is with a traditional funeral, sometimes that is with some of the other options that are available. And we're right here at the cemetery. So when it's pretty weather, we've been actually just walking out to our grave sites. And that's just such an honor to follow your loved one and place them and have our service. And we're growing and becoming much busier, unfortunately. But I hate that we are so busy, but I am glad that we get to be the one to take care of these people.
How has funerals sort of transformed over the years? I mean, for my experience as a pastor, it used to be the funeral was always at the church. Now, many times they're at the funeral home. And then here recently, I've noticed that they're not at either place. Or recently, I presided at a funeral where the chapel had been converted. All the pews had been removed, and it was all round tables with chairs. And I've even seen some pictures where it looks like you could have a meal catered at a funeral home. So tell us how funerals have changed over the years.
The old timey traditional, growing up, it was a several day event. And there would be a long, way too long visitation. And the next day, maybe even a long visitation. And then on that third day, you would do the burial. Well, now, as you know, and this had nothing to do with COVID, even before COVID was around, we had started modifying funerals, and they were because people are working. And it used to be that not both of the members of the house were working, and they could do those all day long things. And then in the evening, the man would come join. Well, now with everybody working, so we cut back to the evening before, and then a couple hours the next day, followed by a service and a burial. You speak to that about going to the church. It's getting back to that some. We pulled away from it a lot, and I don't know what exactly the reasoning was. It wasn't all COVID, but we're finding that people are wanting to go back to the church. And I love either way, doesn't matter to us, and it doesn't change the cost. When it's here, we try to make it warm and comfortable, but sometimes being where they've been and where they've met all week and on Sunday that's where they need to find their comfort. And it depends too on the size. When you've got a large group, or you have an individual that's maybe worked at the same place for 25 or 30 or 40 years, you're going to expect a larger group. Although I will tell you, 70% of the people that come to a funeral may not have even known the deceased. They are going to be friends and family of the spouse who he or she works with still, the children, if there's grandchildren, and that's who sometimes, not always, but sometimes that's who comes anyway. So we judge it by the crowd, and then we'll go anywhere that people want. When you talk about moving the pews out, we've done some things. We've moved a bedroom into the chapel. And made it where it was her room. And even there was even a point we did the portico. We had them drive through and see people, and we had their uniform and graduation cap and all their memorabilia. Their celebration of life was under the carport, and people drove through. And it was, there's just no end to what can be done now. A celebration of life is to tell that person's story. And I tell the family, your friends and your family should be able to walk into either the chapel or your church home and know exactly what Joe loved to do, what sports team followed, what activities he did. And I'm not talking about the last stages where there may be in a facility, I have to sometimes tell the family, go back to when you fished and when he hunted and when he was so active, and take yourself back to those things that you can get stories from people that he was around, and hear things that maybe you didn't know about Dad. You're going to find some comfort in that. Yes, we will do anything. We've brought a motorcycle in, a rocking chair, sewing machines. We put quilts over. I saw it on Facebook one day and I'm like, well, I did that about 12 years ago. We put quilts on the backs of the pews at church. It was a beautiful service for a woman that was her life. I love that this is something that can be tailored to your family. This is a hard business as it is. And sometimes people don't know what their loved one wants, and that's when I really come into play. But anything that we can do to make it special. We had a service yesterday and it had goo-goo clusters at the register. He loved goo-goo clusters, and I just put on the sign, please take one in memory of this individual. Just anything to make it special,
Yes.
just to individualize that person and literally celebrate the life they lived and share those stories.
As difficult as this kind of conversation is, why is talking about funeral arrangements with your loved one the conversation of a lifetime?
I wish I could tell you how many times I've sat around the table and I've listened to, not only because there are between 75 and 150 decisions to be made on that day. Now, they may be as small as what are they going to wear, or what color is their favorite flower, or but some of them are even bigger than that. Did they want to be cremated? Did they want a traditional funeral? If they have a traditional funeral, do they want the casket open? Can everyone look at them? Do they want absolutely no one to see them regardless? Those are questions that your family will spend 30 to 45 minutes around the table trying to figure out. I've had a family say, well, Mom said she wanted to be cremated. No, she's changed her mind. 2 weeks ago, she told me she didn't want to be cremated anymore. Well, Mom said that it was okay to open the casket. No, Mother said if we looked at her, she would haunt us. There's just so many things that people don't know. And I tell people over and over, of course I am pre-need, but I tell people, sit down and let's write this down. Let's put it in a book. Let's put it away. You write it down. You tell them everything that you want. You go put it in a closet or in a cabinet or beside your bed. And you say, this is where it is. And then you go live your life. You don't talk about it at Sunday dinner. You don't have to discuss it. You just write it down and then go on with your life. Of course, if you fund it, you freeze it at today's price. So you're going to save some money for the family that's left living, but also let your family know what your final wishes are. Don't make them try to figure it out on the worst day of their life. I could get into some of the really negative things, and that's when they've ended up not speaking because this brother wanted this and this sister wanted that, and that's not what Mother would have wanted. And it's just a guessing game at that point, and you're grieving and you're mourning, and it is one of the worst days of your life. You want your way. You want to buy the most expensive casket, or you didn't call on Sunday. And I joke about this, but my son will say, Mom, do you have your casket? And I said, son, I know how tight you are. So I'm not picking my casket, because if you don't call me every Sunday, you're going to be eat up with guilt, and you're going to buy me the best casket they have to offer. And he says, that's just really wrong. And it is. But we see that. Pastor Ann, we see that people they grief spend. I don't want anybody to do that. If you knew that mom wanted the white rose with carnation, you're not going to look at whether it's $2,200 or $4,800. You're going to give mom the white with pink and carnation. Don't put that on your children. Don't put that on your spouse. Don't make them have to make those decisions. All we're asking you to do is write it down so everybody knows what you wanted. I spent 30 minutes with 3 girls trying to figure out mom's favorite flower. And it's important to them. And so many times they'll come back and say, I wish I had done XYZ. Well, you didn't think of XYZ because you were exhausted. You'd been in ICU sleeping in a recliner for a month. You didn't get to see mom for 6 weeks, so you didn't sleep at home. You know, I could go on and on and on the different scenarios. At least take that burden off of your children.
It sounds like as none of us want to think about our own deaths. And so to have these conversations, or even as an individual to think about how they want their funeral and to write that down, means to think about that they will most definitely die. Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, and that's when we put ashes on people's heads and say, from dust you came and from dust you shall return. And it reminds us that we will all definitely die. It sounds like having these kinds of conversation helps prevent developing barriers. Can you tell stories about how not having something in place has resulted in really hurt feelings and even people stop talking to each other?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Like what I alluded to before, them being adamant that mother wanted one thing, or that father wanted this way, or probably the biggest one, to be honest, is not only the type of service, but whether they wanted to be seen. Mother would not have wanted us seeing her. Father didn't want us to have an open casket. You're exactly right. The saddest thing is to sit down with the families that they were bonded, they were close, and because of something that they can't get mom and dad to settle this argument. All these years, mom and dad said, you know, from little bitty on, they would break up the kids and settle things. Well, they're not here together anymore, and those kids feel like orphans, and they're trying to make major decisions, and they're trying to do the best thing, the right thing, the thing that their parents wanted, their last right decision for their parents. And that's too much pressure. And they end up not agreeing. It's long term. It's not you the hurt that is created at the time of a funeral. It seems to stick a little bit longer than just a little family feud on a Sunday. It's like this because you can't go back and undo. You've already buried mom and dad. You've already done a full visitation, or you've cremated, or you've had a 2-day service, or you've let everyone in the community see them. You can't go back and undo that. So yeah, there's definitely barriers. I've seen the barriers. Unfortunately, some of it comes to money. If I could encourage people to do anything, get your will, get your durable power of attorney for healthcare. Sometimes that's the issue, even, is that one of them has had the authority to make the decision. You let it be known what you want. You write down what you want at end of life. And make it very plain. So it's not just a will, it's durable power of healthcare. It's letting everybody know who you want to take care of what, so that you can at least leave your family in peace.
By having these conversations early, making those decisions and writing them down and letting your loved ones know, that actually helps keep relationships and friendships in place in a very, very difficult, crucial times where those friendships and relationships can be easily frayed, and they need to be strong at that time.
Yes, they need to be stronger than any other time because you need each other. You need each other, and if you're all on the same page, things will go much easier, much easier. Everybody grieves so different anyway. You know that. I'm sure you see a lot of that, that everybody grieves different, and everybody's emotions are raw and they're exhausted. And you can make what is one of the worst days of their life easier if you would just take care of some of those things ahead of time
And you can
for
really
them.
focus on celebrating their life
Yes,
instead of
yes,
agonizing and beating each other
yes,
up over the decisions that have to be made. Um,
exactly.
Another thing that I'm really excited about now that COVID is kind of behind us is that Peace Lutheran Church has had a partnership with Spring Hill Memorial Gardens and Funeral Homes in regard to our egg extravaganza. For us
Yes.
at Peace, we love having an Easter egg hunt at the funeral home because we feel like it has a very tangible connection between death and resurrection. What is this event going to entail?
Oh goodness, we're going to have the different age groups, a hunt for the different age groups with beautiful prizes. We're going to have crafts and some fun games. We'll of course have some refreshments because everybody needs refreshments too. And so we're going to do what we were doing before COVID came along, and emulate that that fun event for everybody. We will have a special guest. You know, you have to have a special guest at an Easter egg hunt. And we'll just make a fun day of it for everybody. It's the Saturday before Easter. So this year, that is the 16th of April. And really looking forward to it. We are going to make it a very, very fun day. Or fun morning, I should say, for everybody. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it too.
We at Peace first started talking about having an Easter egg hunt at the funeral home. I would have loved to have even had it among the grave markers. But anyway, I had some conversations with some parishioners who have family members buried in your cemetery and said, you know, how would you feel, since your loved one is buried there, to have kids running around and maybe even on the top of your marker and looking for Easter egg hunts? And I was amazed at how many people found that to be life-giving, that in a place where their loved one is buried, to see life so carefree and joyful was really comforting. And we've since heard that from other people who have come to be a part of the egg extravaganza at the funeral home, that at this place, grief-stricken and devastating to find that life does go on.
Well, and we do stay away from that, as we have such a huge area out here that we can cover without actually going over the graves. But I tell people too, my kids would always say, Mom, don't stay at the cemetery so late at night. And I said, listen, this is a place of healing. This is a place of comfort. If you ever come out here in the spring or the fall, when the trees are in full bloom and the birds are singing, it is a place of healing coming to whether, you know, I think all of us with faith, we know that our loved ones are not there. We believe that that is a shell, but that is a shell that we loved for a long, long time. And I find so much comfort out here. And I tell people the one thing that all those people have in common, they're all heartbroken. When they come out here to visit, they're all here for the same reason you are. So when we bring little children and happiness and joy, you know, I hope that as people are the traffic, that they see that and they understand that we are bringing life to a place that has brought peace to so many people.
Absolutely.
And people don't visit cemeteries like they used to, but
No,
there are
Memorial
still
Day
those that,
weekend is no longer an opportunity to go visit the cemetery and put flowers out. It's just a day out, a day off of work and a barbecue.
yes.
Uh,
Oh, but I'm sure, I don't know if you remember, but as a little girl, we packed a lunch. We took a blanket. We would go from one cemetery to the other because Granny was at this one and Mama Cox was at this one. And It was a fun day. Not for my mom probably as much as for us as children, but people don't do that as much. But I hope that people always know that they're welcome out here to sit and cry, to sit and walk, to talk, to visit, to find some kind of peace and have a conversation. What a great place to come and pray. And I hope that people know that they have that, or that they're always welcome out here to do that.
So I want to ask you just a couple of more questions about the services that you provide. I'm wondering about some of the more green sorts of or earth-friendly sorts of buried, if you will, without being embalmed and without a casket or a vault. Your body is turned into a soil and then you can plant stuff in it. Or
Well, those are definitely options now. We have several funeral personnel that is going to be their choice. There are special cemeteries for the green burial. So obviously we are a perpetual care. That means that long after you and I are gone, and our great-great-great-grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, the cemetery is always going to be mowed and taken care of. Every time I sell a piece of property or a memorial, a percentage of that money goes into a trust fund so that long after we're gone, they're still taking care of it. Unfortunately, with some of the church cemeteries, we find they grow up. People that used to tithe are not there, or they had this good old guy and he always mowed for the last 40 years. And now, unfortunately, he's not there and his grandkids are not going to mow. So you sometimes don't get, the cemeteries are not taken care of as well. So we are perpetual care. So we do have to have vaults. We have to have a vault to protect the casket because of the equipment that we use to take care of the grounds. It also takes care of the markers and any, I mean, there is growth coming here. We're going to be doing a veterans garden and have all the branches of the branches of service represented. And there's just lots of exciting things going on. So there's lots of growth here. If you're going to go anywhere in the world that there's growth, come to Spring Hill, because let me tell you, this place is growing. We do have to have a vault, but there are people that are opting to not have embalming. Out of respect for your family and your loved ones, if you're going to have any type of visitation, it is not a law, but we highly encourage you to be embalmed for obvious reasons. But there are a couple cultures that bury within 24 hours.
I was just going to ask you about those and whether or not those customs, whether or not you were able to accommodate that.
Yes, most certainly. And their graves are done different, and they are their vault is placed different, but it still is. I've done a lot of those in the past. Not done any here yet, but we most certainly could accommodate. Even the placing of cremated remains has become a thing because people didn't realize they could be buried, and you most certainly can bury or put in a niche or put in a water fountain or put in a cremation garden or whatever. So I don't know that that's green, but that is definitely one of the directions people are going. We do have a conservatory. It's in another county for people that just are set on that. And we can provide those services for them. We take care of getting the type of eco-friendly casket or woven basket, if you will. There's just so many different things to choose from. And we definitely take care of that too. We work very well with those people.
Well, thanks, Nina, for taking time out of your super hectic day to talk with us on our podcast. Is there anything else that you would like our listeners to know that maybe I haven't asked about?
Well, just know that we are here to talk, to answer questions. People don't know what they don't know. It is not a fun place that you wake up on a Saturday morning and say, hey, let's run down to the funeral home and talk to Nina. about our arrangements. Your children don't want to talk about it because they don't want to envision a life that you're not a part of. So it is extremely hard for your kids. So don't go to your kids and say, hey, we're going to run down to the funeral home, because they're going to panic. Number one, they're going to say, why? I'll just take care of it, not knowing how it's going to affect them. And so I encourage people to have that conversation with each other. Even if you don't have it with your children, have it with each other. Then come talk to us. Let us answer some questions. Let us put things down for you in writing. We can show you how to fund those different ways to fund that if you choose to pay for it, and get some of those big things out of the way, and then go live your life. We are here. And our service doesn't stop after we bury a loved one. We are here to help and close out affairs afterwards. We're here to answer questions about things that we can tie up and help you with. I am fairly new to the community. I want to infiltrate into this community. I want to become a part of them. I want them to know that they are welcome here anytime to just sit and visit. Just come sit and visit about something that is one of the greatest gifts you can give your family.
Well, thanks again, Nina, for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Pastor Ann, for having me.